Today, we're diving into one of the most intense, knockdown, drag-out fights in modern British history, the struggle for women's right to vote between 1906 and 1913. It's a story that really pushed a democracy to its absolute limit. And this whole story really boils down to one huge, complicated question. What's a government supposed to do when its own citizens start breaking the law to demand their basic rights? This wasn't just a debate. It was a conflict that exploded onto the streets, into Parliament, and inside the prisons of Britain. So let's set the scene. It's 1906. A new Liberal government just swept into power, and they're promising all sorts of big social changes. Pensions for the elderly, new protections for kids. It felt like an exciting age of progress. But there was this massive, glaring hole in all of it. In this new dawn, more than half the population, women, were completely shut out from the most fundamental right of all. Now, you might think the fight for the vote was just one big unified group. But nope, there were two main camps. And while they both wanted the same thing, their strategies could not have been more different. And you've really got to understand this split to get what happened next. On one side, you had the NUWS, the suffragists. They were the bigger organization, and they believed in playing by the rules. Peaceful, constitutional stuff like petitions and lobbying. On the other side, you had the WSPU, the suffragettes. Their motto was deeds, not words. They believed that talk was cheap and that only direct, militant action would ever make the government actually listen. So why did things turn militant? What was the tipping point? Well, it all came down to one thing, really. Sheer political frustration and a deep, burning sense of betrayal. See, the man in charge, Prime Minister Herbert Asquith, was personally dead set against women voting. And he wasn't alone. A lot of politicians were worried about how women voting would shake things up. Between 1910 and 1912, these bills kept popping up in Parliament. They were called conciliation bills that would have given some women the vote. They'd get support, look promising, and then the government would just kill them. For the suffragettes, that was the final straw. And that frustration just exploded. It started to get really intense. In 1910, a protest turned violent in what became known as Black Friday, with reports of brutal police conduct. By 1912, the tactics got bolder. We're talking coordinated window-smashing campaigns. And by 1913, it was arson, cutting telegraph wires, blowing up pillar boxes. The goal was to cause chaos, to make the country impossible to govern. And how did Parliament react to all this? Well, their opposition just got harder. You can just feel the attitude in this quote from 1912. For guys like him, the protests weren't a reason to give women the vote. Heck no. To them, it was proof that women were too emotional, too unstable to be trusted with it. This also made life incredibly difficult for the peaceful suffragists, whose calm arguments were getting lost in all the noise. So, with things getting more and more intense, the government didn't back down. Oh no, it doubled down. And its response became one of the most controversial parts of this entire struggle. When the suffragettes got arrested and thrown in jail, they demanded to be treated as political prisoners, not just common criminals. When the government refused, they unleashed a new weapon, the hunger strike. This basically forced the government's hand. I mean, what do you do? Let them die and create martyrs for the cause? Or let them go and look weak? Well, the government found a third way, and it was brutal: force-feeding. This was a horrific, violent medical procedure. Doctors would restrain a woman, sometimes using metal clamps to hold her mouth open, and force a rubber tube down her throat to pump liquid food into her stomach. It was, by all accounts, a form of torture, designed to break them. As you can imagine, people were horrified by the force-feeding. The public outcry was huge. So in 1913, the government came up with a new, and some would say even more cruel strategy, a new law that quickly earned a very, very sinister nickname. Okay, so check out how this worked. It was this vicious, repeating cycle. First, a suffragette gets arrested. Second, she starts her hunger strike. Third, right when she's on the verge of death, they release her to recover at home. But, and here's the kicker, as soon as she's strong enough, the police show up at her door to re-arrest her, and the whole nightmare starts all over again. You know, the official name sounds so clinical, so harmless, doesn't it? The Prisoner's Temporary Discharge for Ill Health Act. But everyone knew what it really was. The suffragettes nicknamed it perfectly, the Cat and Mouse Act. The government was the cat, and the prisoners were the mice it was toying with. So by the middle of 1913, things were at a total stalemate. a dangerous impasse. And an event was about to unfold that would shock the entire nation and create a martyr for the cause. So, picture it. It's 1913. The government is stuck in this cycle of repression. The suffragettes are more determined and more defiant than ever. The whole country feels like it's holding its breath, like something has to give. And then came the moment that changed everything. June 4th, at the Epsom Derby, a huge horse race, the king himself is there, massive crowds. A suffragette named Emily Wilding Davison runs out onto the racetrack, right into the path of the king's own horse. She was struck down and died a few days later. Her funeral became a massive public spectacle, and she was instantly the movement's first and most powerful martyr. So as 1913 came to a close, where did things stand? Honestly, nowhere good. The vote seemed as far away as ever. The suffragettes' militancy was turning off some politicians, but the government's brutal crackdown was actually creating public sympathy for them. Both sides were completely trapped in this escalating conflict. You've got two sides, neither willing to give an inch, locked in a bitter, grinding fight. It leaves you with this one massive question hanging in the air as 1913 ends. What on earth could possibly happen to break a deadlock this absolute?